Record. Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, class. Okay. So this meeting will talk about science, technology, and art. Okay? Nagbago yung ano natin. Nagbago yung class natin. Di ba? Science, technology, and society. Pero now, mag-art tayo. Okay? Okay. So sa mga makapagbukas ng camera, na highly appreciated. Sa mga hindi, okay lang. I think walang problema. Okay? So let's start. Who remembers this? Raise mag-emote na ano emoji? Mag-emote nung green check. Who remembers this? Lupit, di ba? Okay, so in 2019, nakapag-picture tayo, yun, mga scientists around the Earth, nakapag-picture tayo ng isang image ng black hole. Okay? Previously, black holes are just constructs by scientists, physicists like me, na okay, ito yung dapat itsura ng black hole. Pero we can see it dahil nga napakalakas ng gravitational pull ng black hole. And by that, yung mga ilaw sa paligid niya, na-absorb niya lang. Okay? So it's very hard to picture a black hole. And yung bagay na yun, it sparks na question na totoo ba itong mga black hole na to? Etc. Okay, so this was the first image of a black hole, 2019. Then previously, if we're very aware of the pop culture, nakanood na ba tayo ng Interstellar? Interstellar. Sino nakapanood ng Interstellar? Green check. Okay, green check. So ayan no, maganda tong movie na tong Interstellar ng 2014 and may pinakita doon na black hole, itong image na nakikita niyo on your screen. Okay? This was an artist's rendition of a black hole kung saan ito ay mathematically detailed lang ng mga physicists and then render ng isang artist. Okay? So scientists said na dapat yung black hole ganito itsura niya. Okay? So with that, yung mga artists natin, they made a picture of that. Okay, amazingly, this 2014 image or screen grab from the movie Interstellar and the 2019 image of a black hole is actually similar. Okay? Okay. Parehas pa nga sa picture na to, parehas siya ng tilt dito. Okay, so this part, itong nakikita yung part na to. So itong part siyang ganun. Okay? Yung part na yan. Okay. So, magtataka kayo, sir, bakit ganyan yung image ng isang black hole? Okay. So, sige, explain ko lang din para naman for the benefit of everyone. Okay, bakit may ilaw dito, no? Ba't parang umiilaw yung black hole? So, yung nakikita nyong ilaw dito is yung likod na disk ng black hole. Ay, mali. So, di ba may disk na pa ganun? So, nakaikot yan sa buong sphere sa likod. So, sobrang lakas ng pull ng gravity nito. Dumadaloy na yung mga ilaw sa likod niya papunta sa harap. Okay. So, ito yung mga nakaka-escape na light mula sa likod. So, kaya dumadaloy siya sa taas at baba ng black hole. Amazing, di ba? Because of the strong gravity. Okay. Okay. And then, so, ayan no, nire-relate ko lang yung mga gawa ng isang scientist at isang artist. So, we go back from 1966 to Star Trek. Dito, may hawak nakalimutan ko yung character. May hawak siya ng communicator ang tawag din. Communicator. Para makapag-communicate siya kay Spock. Okay? And to other Star Trek characters. So 1966, yung mga artists natin gumawa ng movie about the space exploration and etc. And they hypothesized that we could actually build something that is a device that communicates with other persons. No? So we have this communicator. And amazingly, 30 years after, nakabuild na tayo ng similar thing. Okay, so the Motorola StarTAC. So yung mga Motorola phones ay pioneer ng mga flip phones. Amazing, di ba? So from science fiction to reality. Amazing, no? Na yung mga fictional na bagay natin, minsan nagagawa natin siyang in reality. Okay? So in essence, art and science, they help each other to make reality. Okay? So science inspires art. Okay? And then art inspires science. Napakalupit. Amazing, di ba? Okay? So, ayun. We might think of art and science as disjoint sets of fields. Okay? Parang, College of Arts and Sciences. Iwala yung mga art, yung mga home people. Yung mga home people pala tayo na. Sila Dre, no? Okay? Parang, hiwalay kami sa science. Okay? Pero hindi. Actually, they work hand in hand. Okay? So when you do science, kailangan mo ng art. Okay? Yung mga math natin, tingin natin wala silang di ba? Wala silang art. Wala silang art component, but they have. Okay? So you do things, science yun, you do things, but yung question of why you do things, that's art. So yung science, walang motivation ng science kung walang art. Okay? And in the same way, wala ring motivation si art kung walang science. Isipin mo paano ka gagawa ng art kung wala kang tools. Okay? So we need science and technology to build art, and art motivates us to build science. Amazing. Now, yung art natin, when you apply it to society, okay, it becomes culture. Okay? Yung differences na mga ginagawa natin in life, the things that motivate us in doing things as a society, that's culture. Okay? Okay. So in science and culture, every innovations or improvements in science and technology impacts culture. Okay. So ano ba tong image na nasa likod ko? May makapag-hula ba kung ano yung image na to? Okay, parang wala. Okay, okay lang. Mahirap mahulaan. Parang wala namang identity. Ay. Okay. Pumindot yung mouse ko. Anyway, katulad doon sa mga unang lesson natin na science and technology, innovations in science and technology creates a social order. Sa science and culture, ganun din, every innovation and new technology impacts culture in many ways. Okay, in many ways na para safe. Okay, so this picture is the destruction of the Library of Alexandria. Okay, so yung Alexandria, place in Egypt. Okay, so a city in Egypt. Ito yung kinonquer ni Alexander the Great, tapos pinangalanan na sarili niya yung lugar. Okay, so sa Alexandria, gumawa sila ng library. Okay, yung library na yun would contain, of course, a lot of knowledge coming from different parts of the world. So yung yung innovation nila is, of course, collecting knowledge. Okay, collecting books, collecting papyrus, scrolls, okay, that would contain knowledge. And anong nangyari sa cultural impact nun? So naging center of attention yung Library of Alexandria. And when the Muslims, the Arabs conquered Alexandria, sabi nung isang leader nila na kapag in line with the Quran yung mga bagay na yun, okay, wag nyo na silang pansinin. If not, destroy them. So that's what happened to the Library of Alexandria, which was destroyed. Walang trace in history. Ang meron lang ay historical accounts na nagsasabing it exists. Okay? Dahil nasakop din ng Romans ang Egypt. And then by that, naging Christian yung Alexandria, yung people in Alexandria. And when the Muslims conquered them, okay, so may conflict in religions and such. Okay. Okay. Okay, ano to nasa picture? Sugarcane, sugar. Okay. Napansin ng mga katutubo natin, mga ancestors natin, na when you bite into this sugarcane, you get something sweet. Okay? Sugar. Okay. So, na-realize ng mga tao na pwede mo extract yung asukal mula sa mga sugarcane. Okay? And when you you have this you have the sugar, you have energy, di ba? Magiging main source of energy siya. And of course, sugar is very addictive. Chocolates, etc. Okay, so yung innovation sa atin nun, lalong nag-improve yung sugar production. Okay? Nag-improve yung sugar production. Pinabilis niya, and etc. Okay, anong impact nun sa culture natin? America, okay? America. So, diabetes. Okay? Dumami yung, nag-inflate yung mga number of people na nagkakaroon ng obesity dahil nagkakaroon ng overproduction. Well, not necessarily overproduction. Gumanda lang yung production ng sugar and naging mas accessible for all. Okay? Without the hassle of extracting them from sugar canes. So that's very cultural, no? Na yung mga innovations natin, they could result to something bad or something good. And in this case, well, may good naman dahil food production ito, pero yun nga, yung mga side effects na tulad ng obesity, nagkakaroon din. Okay? Okay, who's this? May nakakilala ko sino to. Raise hand kayo pag nakilala niyo siya. Okay, wala. Okay. Okay lang, walang nakakilala. Ako rin, hindi ko siya kilala nung una eh. Okay, ito ay si Queen Victoria. Okay, si Queen Victoria. Mga British people, British. Okay, so si Queen Victoria, amazingly, no, nag-research ako kay Queen Victoria. Ano yan, 4'11 lang pala si Victoria. Si Queen, si Madam Victoria. 4'11 lang siya, tas Queen, di ba? Napakalupit. So, wala yan sa height. No? Sa mga nag-down dahil maliit sila. Wala yan sa height dahil si Madam 4'11 lang. Okay, ano meron kay Queen Victoria? So si Queen Victoria ay nag-rule nung Industrial Revolution. Okay, and by that time, in her time, naging age of progress yung, so, di ba, progress na yung Industrial Revolution. So within that, si Victoria pa, naging age of progress palalo. Okay? So sa Victorian era, maraming babaeng nag-flourish. Okay? So nagkaroon ng unang medical doctor, medical, basahin ko para sure. Sige, kaya ko to. So, nagkaroon na tayo ng babaeng may unang medical degree in Britain. Nagkaroon din tayo ng mga babae na nag-expose ng sexism, okay, in the workplace dahil 'di ba Industrial Revolution na. Okay? So may inequality between men and women. So we have women exposing those inequalities, and then there are women helping in the war, etc., etc. So ano yung innovation doon? Industrial Revolution. So when the Industrial Revolution is on its peak, natututong mag-speak up yung women. Okay, mag-speak up yung mga oppressed people in our society. Okay. Yung manap yung term eh. Okay? Amazing, no? So now, let's pause for a while dahil manonood tayo ng mga things. Okay, so stop share ko muna ito. Manonood tayo ng things. Pangit pag ako lang nagkukwento, parang walang thrill. So manood tayo ng... Kita na ba? Kita na ba? Thumbs up kung kita na. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go. Let's watch. So the title, basahin na lang. Ay, wait lang. Walang sound, no? Wait lang. Yeah. Share screen. Dapat yung share sound kasi. Ay, nako, Osten. Okay. Let's try it again. One more time. May sound. Okay. Labit.
2,300 years ago, the rulers of Alexandria set out to fulfill one of humanity's most audacious goals, to collect all the knowledge in the world under one roof. In its prime, the Library of Alexandria housed an unprecedented number of scrolls and attracted some of the Greek world's greatest minds. But by the end of the 5th century CE, the great library had vanished. Many believed it was destroyed in a catastrophic fire. The truth of the library's rise and fall is much more complex. The idea for the library came from Alexander the Great. After establishing himself as a conqueror, the former student of Aristotle turned his attention to building an empire of knowledge headquartered in his namesake city. He died before construction began, but his successor, Ptolemy I, executed Alexander's plans for a museum and library. Located in the royal district of the city, the Library of Alexandria may have been built with grand Hellenistic columns, native Egyptian influences, or a unique blend of the two. There are no surviving accounts of its architecture. We do know it had lecture halls, classrooms, and of course, shelves. As soon as the building was complete, Ptolemy I began to fill it with primarily Greek and Egyptian scrolls. He invited scholars to live and study in Alexandria at his expense. The library grew as they contributed their own manuscripts, but the rulers of Alexandria still wanted a copy of every book in the world. Luckily, Alexandria was a hub for ships traveling through the Mediterranean. Ptolemy III instituted a policy requiring any ship that docked in Alexandria to turn over its books for copying. Once the library's scribes had duplicated the texts, they kept the originals and sent the copies back to the ships. Hired book hunters also scoured the Mediterranean in search of new texts, and the rulers of Alexandria attempted to quash rivals by ending all exports of the Egyptian papyrus used to make scrolls. These efforts brought hundreds of thousands of books to Alexandria. As the library grew, it became possible to find information on more subjects than ever before, but also much more difficult to find information on any specific subject. Luckily, a scholar named Callimachus of Cyrene set to work on a solution, creating the Pinax, a 120-volume catalogue of the library's contents, the first of its kind. Using the Pinax, others were able to navigate the library's swelling collection. They made some astounding discoveries. 1,600 years before Columbus set sail, Eratosthenes not only realized the Earth was round, but calculated its circumference and diameter within a few miles of their actual size. Heron of Alexandria created the world's first steam engine over 1,000 years before it was finally reinvented during the Industrial Revolution. For about 300 years after its founding, in 283 BCE, the library thrived. But then, in 48 BCE, Julius Caesar laid siege to Alexandria and set the ships in the harbour on fire. For years, scholars believed the library burned as the blaze spread into the city. It's possible the fire destroyed part of the sprawling collection, but we know from ancient writings that scholars continued to visit the library for centuries after the siege. Ultimately, the library slowly disappeared as the city changed from Greek to Roman, Christian, and eventually Muslim hands. Each new set of rulers viewed its contents as a threat rather than a source of pride. In 415 CE, the Christian rulers even had a mathematician named Hypatia murdered for studying the library's ancient Greek texts, which they viewed as blasphemous. Though the Library of Alexandria and its countless texts are long gone, we're still grappling with the best ways to collect, access, and preserve our knowledge. There's more information available today and more advanced technology to preserve it, though we can't know for sure that our digital archives will be more resistant to destruction than Alexandria's ink and paper scrolls. And even if our reservoirs of knowledge are physically secure, they will still have to resist the more insidious forces that tore the library apart. Fear of knowledge and the arrogant belief that the past is obsolete. The difference is that this time we know what to prepare for.
Okay, so ayun yung pinukwento ko about Alexandria, sa Library of Alexandria. And syempre, chikadora tayo, ano nangyari kay Hypatia? Hanapin natin si Hypatia. Kung bakit pinatay si Hypatia. Okay, so let's watch that.
In the city of Alexandria in 415 CE, the bishop and the governor were in a fight. It started with a disagreement over the behavior of a militia of monks and ended with an accusation of witchcraft leveled against one of the most powerful figures in the city. Hypatia of Alexandria was a prominent mathematician, philosopher, and advisor to the city's leaders. In the centuries since she lived, the details of her life have been the subject of much dispute and have taken on an almost mythical status. But while none of Hypatia's own writings survive, her contemporaries and students' accounts of her work and life paint a picture of the qualities that made her renowned as a scholar, beloved as a teacher, and ultimately led to her downfall. Hypatia was born around 355 in Alexandria, then part of the Egyptian province of the Eastern Roman Empire, and an intellectual center. Her father Theon was an accomplished Greek mathematician and astronomer. Her mother is unknown. Hypatia was likely an only child, and Theon educated her himself. By adulthood, she had surpassed her father in both mathematics and philosophy, becoming the city's foremost scholar and taking over his position at the head of the Platonic school, similar to a modern university. She refined scientific instruments, wrote math textbooks, and developed a more efficient method of long division. But perhaps her most significant contributions to intellectual life in Alexandria came through her teaching. The philosophy Hypatia taught drew from the legacy of Plato and Aristotle, as well as the mystical philosopher Plotinus and the mathematician Pythagoras. The convergence of these influences merged to form a school called Neoplatonism. For the Neoplatonists, mathematics had a spiritual aspect, divided among the four branches of arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. These subjects were not studied merely for the sake of curiosity or practical utility, but because they authenticated the belief that numbers were the sacred language of the universe. In the repeated patterns of algebraic formulas and geometric shapes, the orbits of the planets, and the harmonious intervals of musical tones, the Neoplatonists saw a rational cosmic force at work. Students delved into this ordered mathematical world to achieve higher unity with this force, known as the One. While Hypatia was considered pagan, a term for traditional Roman belief before Christianity, she worshipped no particular deity or deities, and her ideas could be applied alongside multiple religious viewpoints. Jewish and Christian, as well as pagan students, traveled from the farthest reaches of the empire to study with her. The nonpartisan environment Hypatia fostered, where all students could feel comfortable, was especially remarkable given the religious and political turmoil that was fracturing the city of Alexandria at the time. Christianity had recently become the empire's state religion. The local Archbishop Cyril had steadily gained political power, commanding zealous militias of Christian monks to destroy pagan temples and harass the Jewish population. In doing so, he encroached on the secular authority of the Roman governor Orestes, himself a moderate Christian, leading to a bitter public feud between the two men. Because she was seen as a wise and impartial figure, Governor Orestes consulted Hypatia, who advised him to act with fairness and restraint. But when a group of Cyril's monks incited a riot, badly injuring Orestes in the process, he had their leader tortured to death. Cyril and his followers blamed Hypatia, accusing her of witchcraft to turn Orestes against Christianity. In March 415, as Hypatia was traveling through the city, the bishop's militia of monks dragged her from her carriage and brutally murdered and dismembered her. Hypatia's death was a turning point in the politics of Alexandria. In the wake of her murder, other philosophers in the Greek and Roman tradition fled, and the city's role as a center of learning declined. In a very real way, the spirit of inquisition, openness, and fairness she fostered died with her. For another harrowing tale of the demise of a powerful woman,
Ang sad, no? Kawawa naman siya. Ay, ano ba? Continuous ba yung play ng video? Hindi naman siya naglalag. O naglalag ba? Samantha, anong ano? Hindi naman.
please.
Okay.
Consistent naman.
Okay. Nakabahan ako yung internet ko. Okay, and then lastly, may papanoorin pa tayong isa. So, ngayon, tingnan natin ano ba yung recent technological advances natin in science. Okay, so we have the artificial intelligence. And then recently, recent is recent, 2018, yung mga AI natin, nakagawa sila ng painting. Okay, so let's watch this one. Yeah.
That ear-piercing scream is ah! This is what the elusive artist Banksy wanted to happen when his Girl with the Balloon piece sold at auction. That does hurt your ears, though, when you got an earpiece in. But instead of being completely shredded like in the rehearsal, the painting was only partially destroyed. The work, though, still sold for $1.4 million. Wow. The stunt challenges the idea of what art is. And now Christie's auction house is making a statement of its own. Next week, Christie's will be the first auction house to offer artwork created by artificial intelligence. What? We are seeing the portrait of Edmond de Bellamy right here in Studio 57, only on CBS this morning. It was created by the Paris-based art collective Obvious. So it used an algorithm to analyze data set of 15,000 portraits and then created a very unique image. Christie's international head of prints and multiples is Richard Lloyd. He is here with the piece. I find when I meet British people, I have to start talking like you.
Oh, really? Yes. How We Live is all like The Crown. That's a documentary. that's real life for us, yeah.
Richard Lloyd, we are so glad you're here to talk about this piece.
Thank you,
because you said don't call this a mashup. So explain to us how it works.
Obvious used a nifty piece of software. It's called the GAN algorithm. And what they did is they uploaded thousands of images to a computer. And at that point, it actually splits itself in two. One half is called the generator, and that analyzes those thousands of portraits and learns what a portrait is. So it's got two kind of round things here and a thing here and a kind of a, and it sort of passes through all those and then thinks, okay, now I'm going to start creating my own versions of those. Excuse me, the second half of the computer, the discriminator, tries to spot that. And every time the cycle is run, if the discriminator is able to say, wait a minute, that's created by computer, the generator runs it again. And the cycle finishes when the discriminator says, I give up, I can't tell. I can't tell the difference between the computer-generated version and the human-generated version. And that's what's popped out.
Do you think this looks good? And how much do you think it would sell for?
Well, we've estimated at 7,000 to 10,000.
Wait lang. Do you think this looks good? Okay, sorry. Sorry. Natawa lang ako.
$1,000. And we put a lot of thought into the estimate because if we put a huge amount on it, people would say, well, what are you basing that valuation on? Because this is the first. But also we thought that that was just at the right sweet spot where people would respect it as a work of art, because the creators certainly think of it as that. But we didn't want to put a huge amount, as I say, because this is so new.
And Richard, who is the artist? Is the artist the AI programmer or the people who wrote the AI
Well, there you go.
program?
You've just cut to the chase. I mean, or is it the person that wrote the algorithm? Is it a sort of a combination of the artwork that was uploaded? Is it the people that sort of tweaked the software? I think this is why this is so inspiring and interesting, because we've never really had to ask those questions before.
How do you anticipate human artists will respond to this and view this as a threat if this becomes a trend?
I remember reading years ago that when TV news started, that print journalists thought, well, that's it. Who's going to read a newspaper? That everybody's just going to watch it. But in fact, both exist side by side. So I think that in the future, in 5, 10, 15 years' time, I think there will be parallel tracks. There will be human art, there'll be artificial intelligence art, but there'll also be a hybrid. I think that's what's coming down the pike in the near future. It's artists who've always been great early adopters. I mean, Warhol adapted screen printing, which came from commercial packaging. Photographers took the camera and thought, well, we can do weird and wonderful things with this. So I think human artists will be working side by side with this algorithm and creating hybrid art. I mean, it's just the beginning. It is so fascinating what is going to be created.
And we know that art is subjective, but I'm still curious, as an expert, when you
Yes.
look at this, do you say, this is a masterpiece, this is amazing? Or do you think, it's okay?
You know what? I've done a lot of research into AI art, and there is something about using human-centric words like masterpiece. You just kind of stop short. Because I think a great work of art is a link with another person. So you think of, Van Gogh, you think, what he was like, what he was going through to create that. Whereas this is an algorithm. So
Well, and we have to wait for the links to be created to other people as it
Yes.
gets out in the world. Richard Lloyd, thank you so much
not
for
at
being
all.
here.
Thank you for inviting me.
The portrait of Edmond de Bellamy is up for auction October 25th.
Oh, ayos pala. Gawa na lang tayo ng computer program. Mas makabenta tayo ng $10,000. Auction na daw siya. 7,000 to 10,000. Tama, di ba? Ito pa rin ako sa tanong natin. So, okay, going back. Okay. Sige, nakabalik na ba? Nakikita na. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, we go back. Okay, so that's artificial intelligence and art. So, ayun, ang daming impact ng growth ng science and technology when it comes to art and culture. So, ito yung painting kanina. Yes, masterpiece. Oh. Hater no? Okay. Anyway, meron tayong group activity. Siyempre, gagawin nyo na lang in your own time. So, deadline nito is next week. Okay? Okay. So, machine learning and art. Okay. The art created by a machine is owned by the creator of the algorithm. Yung tanong kanina nung nag-interview. So, kanino raw ba, sino yung creator ba nito? Yung gumawa ng machine? Ay, yung gumawa ng algorithm or yung machine? Okay. So, in your group, so mag-usap kayo, agree ba tayo, disagree ba tayo, italin nyo, no? Tapos sulat nyo in a sentence form na three of us agree that blah, 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 blah. Okay, because, ganyan. And then, two of us disagree with the reason that ganito, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Okay? So we have 3 questions, and then a machine that can generate, ano ba to? But copy-paste pa. Copy-paste lang ako ng tanong. A machine that can generate its own art should have its own intellectual property rights. Agree or disagree? Again, tatalin nyo lang yung sagot nyo. Then explain things. Of course, kailangan nyo pa rin ng citation sa mga ginagawa nyo. Okay? The value of the artwork created by a robot is lower than the value of artwork created by a human. Agree or disagree? Okay? Okay. Ayan. So, post ko na lang ito mamaya. Okay? sa Canvas. And then you work as a group. Submit, anong araw ngayon? Thursday? So, Monday. Okay? Deadline Monday. Okay, so sa mga di pa nakakapagpasa ng tawag dito, ng essay, critical essay, pasa nyo. Okay? I mean, late na siya pero requirement yan. So, kailangan nyo magpasa. Okay. So, that's it. That's for the lesson today. Okay. So, ang takeaway today is dapat hindi natin iniisip na magkahiwalay ang art at science. Okay. And every innovation in science and technology affects culture. Okay. Okay. So, ang maganda is sa mga sagot nyo na sa mga susunod na works nyo sa activities or sa pwede nyo apply yan sa final project and sa pang requirement na gagawin nyo is i-apply yung mga ganyang bagay. Okay? Okay. So are there any questions? Okay. Nagtaas ng kamay si Mark. Okay.
Sir, I'd like to clarify lang po. Saan po ipapasa yung group activity?
Sa Canvas pa rin.
Canvas po, sir. And then, isa lang po magpapas sa group?
Yes,
or lahat
yes.
po kami?
Yung leader lang yung magpapas.
Okay po.
Okay. Okay, so yun, leader magpapas. Tapos, limit your answer in 1 page. Okay, 1 page yung body. Tapos, syempre may mga references ka, 2nd page, 3rd page, as well. Okay? Okay, 1 page. Anything else? Any questions? Any clarifications? Okay, sige Mark.
Sir, I have, ano po sana. Sir, okay lang po ba mag-stay dito sa session? Ipapa-final consult po sana namin yung group proposal po namin.
Okay, sure. Why not?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Sino pang magtatanong? Monday po before the class yung deadline. Yes, as usual, before the class. Okay. Anything else? Okay, Renz?
Sir, sorry po, medyo malabo lang po yung dating sa akin. Yung sa yung mismong sagot po namin sa file, kailangan per question po, isang unified answer na po o pwede po namin split po siya na kunwari two-thirds of the group answered agree while the rest answered disagree, ganun po.
Mas maganda yung decomposed na decomposed answer. May rason for both sides. Okay?
Thank you po.
Kuwari, 3 out of 5. Yun yan. Sagot, agree. Then explain. And then the others disagree because blah, blah, blah. Bawal neutral. Agree, disagree lang. Okay? No one, wala talagang neutral sa mundo. In the world of politics. Okay, any question else? Chika? Wala? Okay, kung wala ng question or kung meron man, joke, meron pa. Sir, lalagyan po ba ulit ng name kung sino sumagot? Hindi nyo nalalagyan ng name kung sino sumagot ng agree or disagree. Okay? Tayo, peer evaluation na lang tayo. Para mag-grade yung teammate. So, walang tamang sagot dun, no? Kung sa agree or disagree. Okay? Walang tamang sagot dun. Kung paano kayo sasagot, again, ngayon yung gigradean ko. Okay, so alam nyo na yung mga philosophies of science last meeting or last meeting. So i-apply nyo yung mga thought process doon, okay? Okay. So, scientific method pa rin, as usual, on all things. Sabi nga ni Pirsig, na if all else fail, use scientific method. Okay, and anything else? Anything else? Okay. Sir, malaki babawas pag sobra ng word sa critical essay. 111 po ata sobra sa akin. Okay. Depende kung gaano kalaki. No? Sige. Depende kung gaano kalaki. So, kung dumoble yung words mo, 2,000, medyo malaking problema yun. No? Kasi number 1, tatama rin na ako magbasa. So may bias na ako sa sarili ko, napagod na ako. Okay. Okay, I would like to ask po about the peer evaluation of the first. Magpa-post ako post ako nung peer evaluation nung unang activity. Okay? Hindi ko pala nagagawa. Kasi, naman akong ginagawa. Anything else? Okay, kung wala nang tanong. Joke, meron pang tanong. Sir, may deductions po ba pag lagpas 230 ang submission? Yes. Yes, may deduction. Variable yung deduction. So, mas matagal, mas malaking deduction. Okay? Next year nyo ipasa bagsak. Siyempre. Kasi incomplete na kayo pagkatapos ng SEM. So, 1 year. Wala na yung grade niyo. Kailangan yung work ng STS. Hindi kayo makabagsak pa lang. Magiging incomplete lang. So, kailangan nyo lang i-retake yung course. Okay, anything else? May tanong pa ba, mga ma'am, sir? Tanong sa akin, wala na. Okay. Kung wala na, ito na. Final na talaga. Wala na nag-chat. Okay, kung wala na, or kung meron man, na-send nyo sa Canvas. And kung urgent sa email. Okay? Okay. So, yun lang class natin today. Nagli lang, diba? So, have a nice day. Okay na? Class dismissed na. So, yung mga mag-stay, kung gusto mag-consult about the final project, lang, stay lang. Okay lang. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, sir. Thank you po.
Thank you, sir.